Hello again, ladies and gentlemen. While waiting, we'd like to present to you this short video about UMT. So please sit back and enjoy. Good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Vice Chancellor of University Malaysia Terengganu, Professor Dr. Mazlan bin Abdul Ghaffar, Director of the Undergraduate Program and Representative of the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs of the Mindanao State University Iligan Institute of Technology, Professor Ruben L. Abukayon, Head Librarian of University Malaysia Terengganu, Tuan Haji Abu Hassan Ghazali, Director of the International Centre of University Malaysia Terengganu, Associate Professor Dr. Ahmad Faisal Muhammad Ayub, and Deputy Director of the International Centre of University Malaysia Terengganu, Professor T.S. Dr. Lam Su Siung, Senior Officers of University Malaysia Terengganu, distinguished moderators and forum panelists from University Malaysia Terengganu, Universitas Sriwijaya Indonesia, and Mindanao State University of the Philippines, staff and students from local and international institutions who are here with us today, on Facebook, YouTube, and on Zoom. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kaizani, and I am extremely pleased and honored to welcome all of you here today at this international forum entitled Indipendence, a Historical Perspective and the Way Forward. I believe that being here on this online forum is a momentous occasion for all of us, for despite this current pandemic that has caused so many interruptions to crucially important discussions, we are nonetheless able to get together in the spirit of cooperation and fraternity. So on behalf of the organizing committee, I hope that you will enjoy today's discussion. Without further ado, I would like to invite the Honorable Vice Chancellor of University Malaysia Terengganu, Professor Dr. Mazlan bin Abdul Ghaffar, to say a few words of welcome. Professor?
Thank you very much, Ms. Taizani. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good evening, everybody. Professor Rubens L. Abukea, Director, Undergraduate Program, Representative of Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs, Mindanao State University, or I normally call it MSU, and Elegant Institute of Technology. Tuan Haji Abu Hassan Ghazali, Head of Librarians, University Malaysia Terengganu. Associate Professor Dr. Ahmad Faisal Muhammad Ayub, Director of the National Centre, University Malaysia Terengganu. Prof. T.S. Dr. Lam Su Siong, Deputy Director of the National Centre, University Malaysia Terengganu. Senior Officer of University Malaysia Terengganu, distinguished panelists from University Malaysia Terengganu, Universitas Sriwijaya, Indonesia, and Mindanao State University, Philippines. Staff, students from local and international institutions who are here with us today on the Facebook, YouTube, as well as Zooms. Okay. It gives me a very great pleasure to give you all a very warm welcome on behalf of University Malaysia Terengganu, and to say how grateful we are to have you to join this program. I would like to express my appreciation to event panelists who have been invited from Malaysia neighborhood countries, the Philippines, Indonesia, and also UMT internal moderators and panelists. A big congratulations to Office of Corporate Communication as an Indipendence event coordinator and International Center as a manager for this international forum, Indipendence, a history, perspective, and the way forwards, the theme of our forum today. Okay, praise be to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. With His permission and kindness, we are able to observe the 64th anniversary of the formation of Malaysia as an independent, sovereign, democratic, peaceful, and prosperous nation. Ladies and gentlemen, 31st August 1957 marks the day that the Federation of Malaya gained its independence from British colonizations, forming what we know of today as Malaysia. Hence, 31st August is a national public holiday to commemorate and celebrate the freedom and independence gained. And this day is also known as Hari Merdeka in the Malay language. The celebration of Independence Day is incomplete without the 7th shout of Merdeka and the gesture initiated by the first Prime Minister of Malaysia, Tunku Abdul Rahman, back in 1957 at Dataran Merdeka. As Malaysian, what we enjoy and the achievement that we have today gained through trial and error, were destined to be full of challenge. Looking at the history, like America in the early age of a newly independent nation, the challenges became all the more acute with the early adoption of the system and philosophy of national administration based on parliamentary democracy, constitution, monarchy, and a federation when the alteration process had yet to mature. As a country, Malaysia and its citizens are at a crossroads. That choose that choice we made today will determine the fate and the future facade of Malaysia. The motherland which will we pass on to our children and the generation to come. Ladies and gentlemen, currently, public access to all levels of education is expanding in line with the corpus of knowledge that they possess. At the same time, suitable economic growth, the reduction in the poverty rates, and the social engineering initiative and their effectiveness have succeeded in raising the standard of living and create a significant middle class. Now, the preference and requirement of Malaysians has undergone massive changes compared to 4 or 5 decades ago. In aspect of Malaysian education system has undergone various reforms since 1824. Malaysian education system have reformed significantly since independence, and there will be always changes that is need to adapt. The post-independence shown a comprehensive system of education was developed by departments, act, and policy. Over the past 1996 years, over the past 196 years, the Malaysian education system have evolved by stages, which led to the current Malaysian Education Blueprint, or we call it MEB, 2013 to 2025, that is shaping to transform the Malaysian education system by focusing on 11 shifts under the MEB. It is hoped that the Malaysian Education Blueprint 2013 to 2025 will achieve its set target by 2025, and it will mark 201 years of history. Ladies and gentlemen, Independence Days and National Days in Malaysia is celebrated with excitement. Similar to most countries, the celebration will be demonstrated ex-national flag as the most prominent symbol for the celebration. Every year, grand activities and festivities are organized by government and institutions. However, due to this pandemic situation, it is celebrated under the new normal circumstances. And this is the second year celebration due to COVID-19 pandemic. The event this year will also not involve the presence of members of the public physically, and it would be carried on a small scale face-to-face and under strict control. UMT has organized 16 events in conjunction of this celebration. All these programs have been designed virtually. And today we have the International Forum, and I think this is one of the high impact events with involving internationally and locally views on independence. We realize the festivities of the independence celebrations due to this current situation cannot be comparable to the previous years. However, the spirit of independence have to be enlivened continuously as part of our loving to our countries and our appreciation to the superheroes in defending our country. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring all of us to the concept of independence related to what we have to face now. It is not only for Malaysia, but to all countries throughout the world. Without realizing, we are currently have been colonized by COVID-19, where the invisible enemies of the site are and also the silent killer. It is part of our responsibility to fight this colony from continuing to reign on our earth until we reach independence. Now, we are acting as a soldier and our weapon is only unity. Not only taking care of ourselves, but we have to concern on the people around. The pandemic independence will be not achieved if everyone look down upon this crisis. This is coincident with this year national theme, Malaysia Prihatin, and for UMT, we use Malaysia Prihatin, UMT Chakna. For those Prihatin and Chakna words have to bring a meaning of concerns. As such, we should embrace the theme and be caring. I'm sure when we care, world will be able to break the COVID-19 change and remains peaceful and prosperous. I would like to highlight a quote from Malaysian Prime Minister. When we care, we empathy with others. When we care, we take care of the safety and health of our community. When we care, we unite to fight against the enemies of the countries. Ladies and gentlemen, as my last words, we have to remember that everything we have is given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we should appreciate even the smallest thing that Allah give us. Having good health, for example, happy family, and a peaceful environment. All of these things we have to appreciate because Allah can take it back from us anytime. We should never take for granted of anything that God or Allah has given to us. When we learn to appreciate things, we will live happier. We will live happier because we realize that the world is not a bad place. The world is not a bad place after all. On the other hand, come and let us power a future that is filled with hopes and dignity. Again, I'd like to thank everybody involved in this execution of this event today. And I pray that everything planned for this program will run as smoothly as possible. Also, I would like to extend my appreciation again to the organizing committee, technical team, and everybody involved in the work and contribution to the success of this program. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor. Ladies and gentlemen, we shall now take a few moments to capture a snapshot of this historic occasion by taking a group photograph. So if you'd all be so kind as to turn on your webcams so that we can take a photo, we'd be so grateful for your cooperation. And ladies and gentlemen, since there are so many of us here today, I'm going to count to 20 because that's how long it's going to take to capture all your photographs. So now don't forget to smile and say cheese. So I'm going to count 1 to 20. Make sure you're smiling all the way, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, I think there's still a few more, 19 and a half, 20, okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm now pleased to turn the mic over to Dr. Abdul Rahman bin Abdul Latif, who will be your moderator for the keynote address.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good afternoon everyone. In conjunction with National Month celebration, University Malaysia Terengganu under the International Centre brings to you an international forum with the topic Indipendence, a historical perspective and the way forward. My name is Abdul Rahman Abdul Latif. I am a lecturer under the Policy Studies Department, Faculty of Business, Economic and Social Development, University Malaysia Terengganu. I will be serving as your moderator today. Before we get started, I wanted to take a few minutes of your time. To the audience, you will have the opportunity to submit text question to today's panelists by typing your question into the chat box. You may send in your questions at any time during the webinar, and we will collect these and address them at the end of the session. Please tell us your name, where are you from, and your question to each panelist. The registration link will be provided after the second round of our webinar. Stay tuned with us because we will be discussing a very interesting topic today. We are very lucky today because we have three great panelists from three different countries in Southeast Asia. Now, I would like to introduce our panelists for today. First, I would like to welcome Assistant Professor Acil Dauk from Mindanao State University, Philippines. Mr. Acil Dauk currently is an assistant professor at Department of History, College of Arts and Social Sciences, Mindanao State University, Philippines. He obtained bachelor degree in history at the same university in 2004. Later, he finished master's degree in history in 2006 from the same university. In 2017, he received his second master degree in anthropology from University of San Carlos, Philippines. How are you, Mr. Acil?
I'm actually excited, and good afternoon, everyone.
Next, we move to our second panelist from Universitas Sriwijaya, Indonesia. Please welcome Ms. Nur Aslamiah Supli, or we can call her Miss Mia. Miss Mia is a lecturer from the Faculty of Political Sciences, Universitas Sriwijaya, Palembang, Indonesia. She was an alumnus of University Utara Malaysia, UUM, both for undergraduate and postgraduate studies. She completed Bachelor of International Affairs and Management in 2012 and obtained Master of Science in Strategic Studies in 2014. How are you, Miss Mia?
Alhamdulillah, thank you for asking, Dr. Rahman. Thank you for having me, and happy Independence Day, everyone.
Finally, please welcome our third panelist from Malaysia, Dr. Nazli Aziz. I'm sure UMT students already know him very well. Nazli Aziz is a senior lecturer of politics and policy studies at University Malaysia Terengganu, UMT. He is the coordinator of Center for Ocean Governance, Institute of Oceanography and Environment, INOS, UMT. He has been involved in a number of research or consultation projects as the principal investigator and co-researcher that cover of themes on parliamentary affairs, oceans governance, geopolitics, community development, and coastal socio-economic planning. His research or consultation projects engage with a range of government agencies, policy consultancies, and non-profit organizations, NGOs. His scientific works are published in scholarly outlets, technical reports, and policy briefings. How are you, Dr. Nazli?
I'm very fine, Dr. Rahman. Thank you.
Before we start the first round question, I would like to give a little trivia fact about Malaysia's independence. In Malaysia, we have two important dates that we celebrate every year. First, we celebrate Independence Day on 31st August, also known as Merdeka Day. Second, we have Malaysia's Day that we celebrate on 16 September every year. Malaysia was formed in 1963 when the former British colony of Singapore and the East Malaysian state of Sabah and Sarawak joined the Federation of Malaya. This event is marked by Malaysia Day. Later, Singapore left the Federation in August 1965. Now, moving along to our session, we start with a basic question to all our panelists. Mr. Achil, what does independence mean to you? Please,
Oh,
Mr. Achil.
okay. Okay. So, there's actually I don't know if this is also going on in Malaysia or Indonesia, but in the Philippines, every time we celebrate Independence Day by June 12th, people would usually ask, "Are we really independent in the first place?" There's always these expectations about whether or not the Philippines really is independent because we've been under two colonizers for almost 400 years, and considering its effect, it's still basically um, we're still very much under its effect even to this day. Now, that's basically what Filipinos are all about. They usually, during these kinds of holidays, people would ask, "Are we really independent?" Or sometimes this weird way of asking, like, "Are we truly Filipinos?" As if there's something more or something behind the curtain that needs to be discovered. Or I myself do not subscribe to such ideas. So personally, my idea of independence is just like the speech that was presented earlier, the ability of a country to do trial and error, the ability of a country to enact changes, to have reforms, and most especially the one that really hit me the end of that speech earlier was that the idea of caring, that people would actually care about things that would, let's just say, constitute what can be said as a common cause. So in order for people to unite, not that they are basically united because of a common identity, but of a common cause because they care to change society for the better and all of that. So as long as countries are within that range, then I think one can say they are independent. Like I can look at the history of the Philippines and say we did have a lot of trial and error. I can look at what is going on in Malaysia, for example, with Dr. Mahathir and all the changes that went on, and then now we have Indonesia, which every time I look at the news and hear Indonesia, they always talk about democracy and all of that. With the there's really a change, and that we were not, in some ways, we are not really forced to do it. That we are actually doing this trial and error thing. That to me is independence. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Achil, for the explanation. Now, we move to the second panelist, Miss Mia. What does independence mean to you, Miss Mia?
Thank you, Dr. Rahman. As Professor Acha said before, independence for him is a trial and error. We can conclude that every people, every nation have different perspective of how to interpret what is independent is. But really, as for me, independent is not limited for struggle for freedom from oppressing or freedom of speech. It's more likely a time for us. It was more likely to opportunity for us to seize the day. You know, as we are people today, it's not really sharing the same feeling with others, people before us, our ancestors. We're not really experience the oppressing, experience the struggle of exploitation. But what we're facing today is different threats, different issue. As Professor Basla mentioned before, we are currently facing COVID-19 period. With it means that there are a lot of issues going on. There are a lot of evolution will be facing, right? So this independent, as for me, is like opportunity for us, opportunity to be a better person, opportunity to seize the day, creative, make a better way to our as Indonesian person today. You know, as me Indonesian, we really don't feeling like Indonesia never colonized before us for me. Because what Indonesia has we was established in 70 August, which means Indonesia never colonized before. But in other words, independent is opportunity, everybody. Opportunity, especially for developing nation like us. We can make a uh, better, better than our people before. A lot of nation has been declined. A lot of the superpower country have been collapsed, hit the wall. Even before this country even exists, a lot of empire, a great empire have declined. So we can learn from the past and predict for the future, aiming for the better future that we can be better than that. That is independent for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Mia, for a very interesting fact about the independence. And one point that I can take from Miss Mia, opportunity to be a better person. So independence from Miss Mia was opportunity to be a better person. Okay, let's go to Dr. Nazli Aziz. What does independence mean to you, Dr. Nazli?
Terima kasih, Dr. Rahman. Before I answer your question, I would like to take a few seconds to express my gratitude to the International Center, University of Malaysia Terengganu, and the Forum Secretariat for inviting me as one of the panelists for this webinar. Back to your question, I reckon I don't have much to say. It has been expressed by Prof. Archie and Prof. Mia. My point are quite similar to them. But I would like to add on a few points here. I'm not going to touch on what independent means to individual mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. My point here are concentrated on independent means to a nation state, to citizen overall. To me, independence is freedom. Independent means freedom. Freedom for us as a nation state to self-govern our country's current and future direction. Secondly is freedom to reassert our sovereignty that was taken by the colonial. And third is freedom to countermeasure any foreign interference that may cause instability in our home affairs and domestic politics. And of course, the most significant one is the nation's birth because of the independence. I stop here, Dr. Rahman. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Nazli Aziz, for a precise explanation about independence. And we can hear so many things about freedom, and freedom common with independence. Now we're moving to the second round with a more specific question to our panelists. Mr. Achil, what history tell us about independence and how can it benefit Philippines' future?
In our case, in the Philippines, our probably most famous historical figure, Jose Rizal, he's a bit of a cliche in our country, but one thing that we ought to learn from him in terms of independence and how it can benefit the future is that people should focus themselves to I go back to what was said again about caring. Like when you care, because like say if independence is something to do with self-governance, and then when we do care for that, we tend to look at society and let's just say create for ourselves common causes that would lead us to unity, because unity is such a shaky thing, especially in a very diverse. I think I can probably say the same with present day Indonesia and Malaysia. But one thing that he would have wanted the Filipinos to learn is to not focus on individual identities, to not focus on struggles alone based on how you feel, how you or what your sentiment is towards problems, but instead focus on common causes, to care about your society. The problem was that message from him was never really taken that much seriously, I think, because in many of his works, he was actually trying to discuss what happens if a society does not care anymore about what self-governance is, how do we constitute society, how do we create and recreate, just like what Professor Mia was saying, ourselves in relation to our community. And I think that's one thing that's missing really, because I don't know in Indonesia or Malaysia, but in the Philippines, it is as if all of this idea of caring for self-governance and having independence and doing trial and error, this has been kind of like packaged all in all in a form of ideology called nationalism, and as if you are not a nationalist, you don't care about the country, some form of ideal like that, which to me is not necessarily the case or should not be the case. And one thing that our history or the history of the Philippines would tell us is that in the First Republic, everything went downhill when people started becoming provincial, when they started thinking about their individual ambitions and all of that. Not anymore about common causes, not anymore about society, or not caring anymore about the future of the nation itself. I think to have a care would mean to have a cause. And to have a cause means to serve your life for the betterment of society. I think that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Achil. As we can hear from his explanation, so Mr. Achil want us to learn about caring society as what Philippines do right now. So it leads us to unity as a government, as a responsible citizen. So we should care for our society, and we should be unite together to ensure that we can grow together. Thank you, Mr. Achil. Now we fly to Palembang, Indonesia. As we know that Indonesia is a large country and among the countries with the biggest population in the world. Miss Mia, what history tell us about independence and how can it benefit Indonesia's future? Please welcome Miss Mia.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Ahmad. Allow me to share some slides. Actually, I made a list of timeline how Indonesia got colonized. There are 6 nations that have colonized us before. Please wait a sec. Can you guys see PowerPoint I present?
Not yet.
How about now?
We're still waiting.
Okay. So, okay, as you are still waiting the slide, let me tell you guys.
Okay, we can see your slides now.
Okay, actually, you can see, you can doing your own research. You can search on Google that there are 6 countries that have colonized us before. The prominent one is Dutch, and seriously cruel, inhuman nation ever colonized us is Japan. Well, you can see that it only takes 3 years for torture us for Japan. Actually, these 6 colonizer have bending and give us a lot of what we call it, a lot of things to learn from the past. But one thing that I like to highlight, I like to stress in this colonization is the Dutch. I mean, a VOC, one of the company from Dutch, very rich us in this company that have colonized us for more than 100 years. This is the company that came from the small country. Can you believe the small country actually can control a big country with almost 17,000 islands? And then it's become decline because of the corruption. So one thing for sure that every nation can learn from Indonesian colonization is corruption is the bad things. Yeah. So can you imagine if they keep maintaining, be honest, right? They probably still colonize Iceland today. It's a dark joke for to talk with love like this, but I really do know that this kind of company can control us for a long time and just decline because of the corruption. It's really bad for us. Before state Indonesia was established, Indonesia was ruled by some empire. One of the biggest empire is Majapahit. Majapahit was declined because their greatest leader is passed away. So I do learn that the good leadership is also important for us to manage a good country. So either way, there's two lessons that I take from the colonization that happened to us. It's a good leadership and also stay away from corruption. That is it, Dr. Rahmat. This is the point from me. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Miss Mia, for a precise explanation about yes, at least we know now that 6 countries have colonized Indonesia. So Portuguese, Spain, VOC, Dutch, France, British, and Japan. So this is a quite important historical event in Indonesia. Thank you, Miss Mia. Now we turn back to Malaysia with Dr. Nazli Aziz. What history tells us about independence and how can it benefit Malaysia's future, Dr. Nazli?
History tells us about courage, sacrifice, and honor. History also tells us the people, our forefathers, foremothers, both the heroes and and the unsung heroes who fought for us. Although Malaya was their motherland, they had to fight to get it back. Imagine something was rightfully theirs, but they had to negotiate with the colonial, the invader, to free them, to grant Malaya independence. Because of their courage, because of their sacrifice, finally, Malaya was declared independent on 31st August 1957. Malaya, a new nation state was built on say, claim to human dignity, on the preposition that everyone, be a woman, be a man, and child, all had a right to freedom. History also reveals a lesson on how to set apart differences and come together in a positive manner beyond race, belief, and status. You can be Malay, you can be Chinese, you can be Indian, you can be Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, Hindus. But that a nation state is belong to everyone. It wasn't easy, the history also tells us it wasn't easy back then, and it's isn't easy in today's Malaysia. We're still struggling.
Yes.
Our relationship and stereotype and everything. That's what I'm trying to say here. Prejudice and stereotype were often clouded the locals' mindset. That was what the colonial wanted. Therefore, the route to claim back the Malayan sovereignty wasn't an ad hoc task and required certain matter to be sacrificed. Independence was fought by many. Remember, our sovereignty built by people, not by the British, or other superpowers. I stop here, Dr. Rahman. Back to you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Nazli Aziz. Let's take a break for a while before we reach to the final question for the all panelists. We are now going to take some questions. As a reminder, you can still submit questions through the chat box, and we will take some questions for the panelists. Before that, dear all participants, please click on the registration link provided and fill up the attendance form. Make sure you put the right email address, because we will send the e-certificate to the stated email address. We meet again after 5 minutes.
Hey, hi everyone, what's up? It's me Faizal Tahi. Hope everyone is in good health and condition. Saya sebenarnya baru sahaja selepas merakamkan music video Standing in the Eyes of the World bersama dengan staff-staff Duo Pharma yang sangat friendly dan sporting. Buat saya rasa macam seorang penyanyi sebenarnya. I had a really good time. I hope lagu ini sedikit dapat memberi semangat kepada semua orang. I know 2020 has not been the best year so far for everyone, but this is to wishing that 2021 will be a much better year for every single one of you out there, especially to all of you at Duo Pharma. So enjoy the song, and God bless all of you. Thank you.
Looking back on all the years, all the sacrifice. If you want to be the best, you've got to pay the price. You learn it from the very start, just how hard you must try. Cause if you don't spread your wings, then you can't fly. Look at where you are today. Did you ever think that you'd come all this way? Kini standing in the eyes of the world, hanyalah selangkah dari nyata. Keazaman membara di jiwa, menanti saat bebas merdeka. When the time comes and your spirit takes flight, you reach into your soul and live it with all of your might. Yeah, and there's no surprise that you're standing in the eyes of the world.
Harapan yang pernah terkulai layu
kembali segar mekar bawah bayanganmu.
Never been so near. Now the chance is finally here.
Now you're standing in the eyes of the world, only moments away from what can be.
There's affection in the hearts of a few,
ever waiting inside to be set free.
Viva Masa.
history, if we learn from history, it inspires us why they were thinking. You know, William Wordsworth, an English poet in the Romantic age, once said that life is divided into three terms: that which was, which is, and which will be. Let's learn from the past to profit the present, and from the present to better in the future. I stop here, Dr. Rahman. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Nazli Aziz, for a precise explanation. Because takeaway notes that we can get from the explanation from Dr. Nazli Aziz just now. So history tells us what should be done and what should we avoid in future. And we need to learn from our mistake and learn from the past to ensure that we can be better in future. Okay, we move to the second question. Goes to Miss Mia from Yola. From Yola, I guess this is your student, Yola, from the Universitas Sriwijaya, Palembang, Indonesia. Do you think all those historical events has affected the way you think nowadays? Do you think all those historical events has affected the way youth thinks nowadays? Please, Miss Mia.
Can you be specifies the way I'm thinking nowadays?
Yeah.
Can we invite the student to talk? Is it possible?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Please welcome
What's her name again?
Yola.
Yola? Yola, are you here?
Yes, Yola, you want to speak? You want to ask directly to your lecturer, maybe?
Please, Yolanda, to speak directly so this discussion can live. So basically, what the question again?
Okay, the question from Yola. Do you think all those historical events has affected the way youth thinks nowadays?
Okay, so I'm taking as in short how I'm thinking nowadays. Actually, I already mentioned it before. From the history, can learn that we have colonized more than 300 years. From these 300 years, we learned a lot that independence means a lot to us. You know, can you imagine that we have to live our life in oppression? We cannot go to school. When COVID affecting Indonesia, we cannot play with our friends. We cannot meet each other. It's really the new normal is really the new colonization for us. So as for me, how this history impact the way I'm thinking, I already told you that when I facing the operation, I take it as opportunities, right? I take it as opportunities to develop myself. It's not simply just colonize, oppress us, because really, I'm not sharing the same feeling with our ancestors. I'm not share. I don't know how it feels like to be exploitation, right? Running away from the rappers and all those stuff. The cruelty, I don't really experience. Alhamdulillah, and I hope it really stays here like that. But the way I'm thinking, how the history shaping me, like our founding father, the first president of Indonesia, Soekarno says, Jasmera, right? Jangan melupakan sejarah. Don't forget the history, because from the history we can define our future. We learn from each other mistake, like Professor Nazli before, as the professor actually said before, right? So from the history before, we learn that we have to do what we don't have to do the things. We don't have to do the things right? But we can simply develop day by day. You know what I mean? Indonesia really have to pay the big price for the independence, but it's not simply. It really takes time for us. to develop
Yes,
to be
yes,
this nation. So
yes.
this is what we learned. This is what changing my way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is all, Dr. Rahman.
Right. Thank you.
Hopefully
Thank you.
you get the point, Yolanda. If you don't really get the point, you can contact with Erwin.
Yes. Listen it, Yola. So if you don't get the point, please contact back your lecturer. Okay. So let's move to another question. I got from also from the Universitas Sriwijaya, Indonesia, named Filza. Question 3 goes to Mr. Achil. So she want to know, what do you think about independence in education, and have the countries in the world implement it? If not, why did it happen? Please explain your opinion. So, Mr. Achil, I repeat the question. What do you think about independence in education? And have the countries in the world implemented it? If not, why did it happen? Please explain your opinion. I guess it's like exam question right now. So we just hear what Mr. Achil gonna answer about this. Please, Mr. Achil.
Yeah, it feels like answering an essay or exam or something. But anyway, what I understand from the question is something like how relevance is freedom and independence is in relation to education, I think.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it is very important. I myself is a product of an education that's not necessarily like controlled by the state, and I quite like enjoy the education that I have. I'm not quite sure what she meant about whether or not it's implemented, like in which society is it implemented, because in the Philippines, uh, yeah, we do enjoy a certain degree of academic freedom. We do enjoy a certain degree of independence, the way we study, the way we shape knowledge, and all of that. So, I, for example, I'm like, if somebody will ask me what I am all about, it's kind of a bit complicated. Sometimes I sound like a philosopher. Sometimes I sound like an anthropologist, or sometimes I sound like a psychoanalyst. Whatever. Sometimes I write poems or draw things. So, there's just too much freedom in that. So I cannot really relate to societies that doesn't have that same degree of freedom in terms of education, because I think I saw it. I've seen many documentary in Indonesia and in Malaysia that's basically the same thing. So if what she meant, however, or whoever was asking the question, if what she meant, however, was whether or not we are becoming more liberal in terms of following what is going on in the West right now, I have to be honest. I don't like the kind of liberalism that the West is heading right now. This idea of I want to educate myself in the way I want, in relation to the kind of gender that I want, or the kind of identity that I don't like. I may sound like a traditional person here, but no, you cannot compartmentalize knowledge in terms of subjectifying it to a degree that it's related to your personal identity or whatever you look. Because in the West right now, people can proclaim themselves as associated to, I can't even imagine, like there are 86, 82 genders in one country, and like how many more do you want? Is that the kind of education that do you want? That kind of freedom? No, that's a big no for me. That will give a country no sense of direction.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Achil. So let's start the final round with our first panelist, Mr. Achil. What are the challenges in nurturing independence, especially to the millennial? What are the challenges in nurturing independence, especially to the millennial? Please welcome Mr. Achil.
Okay. First of all, I have to say something about what's going on with our social media, especially in the Philippines. There's what Dr. Nazli was saying a little bit a while ago about people inclined to go back to that sense of having a strong leader, a strong figure. that would function like a messiah of the whole society. That's people are looking at Marcos right now in that sense, a kind of historical revisionist attitude wherein people are justifying now the atrocities done in the martial law years, which is actually celebrated, or not really celebrated, but remembered a few days from now, September 21. People are heading towards that direction, and I get what Dr. Nasli was saying a few minutes ago. But one of the challenge is not to repeat the same mistakes again.
Yes.
That would, I think, be because the millennials, they usually are very fond of themselves. I don't know if that's true in your country, but by my observation, I think they are so fond of individual freedom, of this freedom without a sense of duty towards the country, or something of that sort. So they may eventually forget the sacrifices that were made, the heroism that were done by people in the past. Now I get it what Professor Mia is saying, that we never really got to experience what colonialism is.
Yes.
But one must remember that the very existence of our societies right now, these are a product of those processes, and those processes have its own heroes, its own, let's just say, package of the good things about the nation, for example. And if our millennials will only think for themselves as individuals without cause, without a higher service, without a sense of duty to the nation, then I think the greatest challenge would be to forget history. And then I can't like imagine what kind of society will it be if people will start forgetting what was there before, right? So I think if the idea of social media is just we enjoy the freedom of creating and recreating ourselves, but if we only focus on ourselves without that sense of duty towards the nation, I'm not a nationalist myself, but towards society, then it will be, because people will no longer value independence, they will no longer value freedom, and everything will just wherever, it becomes chaotic. So I think that would be a higher danger, because I know that we should not be chained by our history. We should not be chained by it. But it's also equally wrong to not put it in mind, the sacrifices, the challenges that was there before. Thank you.
Okay. Well, such a big question, Mr. Achil. What do you think about the millennial in Philippines nowadays?
On one hand, there's actually like two camps most of the time these days, because our president, Rodrigo Duterte, is a very polarizing figure. There are people who supports him, and therefore is more inclined towards that strongman politics, don't care about democracy anymore, even if they're enjoying it and all of that. And then there's always the other side who claims to be liberals, defenders of democracy. So at the level of consciousness, they do have a little bit of an idea of where the politics is and where to position themselves. I'm just not clear as to whether or not they understand the repercussions of their beliefs, for example. Because people can blindly say, I support Duterte and all of that. Why? Like, and if you criticize Duterte, you will be branded as like, you're not one of us, therefore you're our enemy, something of that sort. Or on the other side, if you're a liberal, or you claim to be a liberal, but yet you criticize a certain degree liberalism, then you will be branded like, oh, you must be pro Duterte, so you're not with us. Sometimes these days, I don't like to open my mouth that much and say my political leanings, because I can get enemies either way. So I just being safe, like, okay, or something like that. So the millennials, you know, they need a lot more to study history, to
Yes.
study the mechanisms of society. They really need a lot more.
Yes. All right, thank you, Mr. Achil. I'm sure the message reached to the millennial, especially our students in this webinar today. Now, let's hear the answer from the perspective of our second panelist, Miss Mia. What are the challenges in nurturing independence, especially to the millennial in Indonesia? Please welcome Miss Mia.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmad. Actually, I already mentioned it many times about the challenges to millennial. So basically, what
This time, don't worry, Miss Mia. You have like 10 minutes to explain further about your points. Don't worry.
okay. So actually, there are a lot of things that I can think about now, but our first president used to say that the struggle, the different struggle between us and them, like they are have to facing the invader, and we are have to facing our people. Struggle for power. I mean, but I think that the most major thing that millennials have to focus about and stress about is not really about the okay. Let's say there are two challenges that they have to facing. It's like external and internal challenges. Like external is from outside the country, where a bad influence came from other culture or any extreme influence. They manipulate people, but really, what I concern about is the human security challenge.
Human
You know
security.
that UNDP, United Development Program, already mentioned there are 7 human security that we have to stress on. They are politics, economy, uh, social, education, and so on, especially the environment. So as the Professor Maslan said before, we are facing COVID-19, right? So millennial people, young people, as for Indonesia, is like a social control and iron stove. So Ancestral already give us the freedom. They left us many resources. This beautiful country, right? So this is the big duty for the young generation as us to protect them. So make sure this sources is benefit for us, for our country. Another thing is actually for Indonesian and Malaysia it's the same, right? We are a developing country where our ancestors leave us with many resources that will benefit us. So the future is right out in our right horizon. It's before our eyes. So if we can manage these natural, these resources, whatever it takes. I mean, like culture, natural resources, for all the stuff that already left for us, we can guarantee the prosperity, the perpetual peace. So the challenges is to do it. In Indonesia, it's more it almost 100% people can read. Literacy rate is almost 90.8%. But the problem is not the reading literate rate, but the problem is the skill. So millennial, you have to face the truth that technology is developed day by day.
Yes.
So you have to focus what you have to face in the future. But probably human will be replaced with machine. This really threat us, especially the economic, when many people got unemployment, right? So millennial right now is facing different threat. It's not it's not that I mentioned in ignoring the what we call it bad influence extreme like that, but really you really have to focus. Your future is a threat. A lot of people today already do degrees but still unemployment. I think this is the third every nation problem, you know. So that's the challenge, the real challenge. Another thing is our environment start to degrade, start to decline. I mean, the pollution is everywhere.
Mhm,
And every day we can really predict the weather. Sometimes
mhm.
it's hot, sometimes it's raining. So it's more likely will start to decline, and I'm afraid we will hit the wall, or maybe this is the end of the world. But really, what you have to do is for every nation, young generation is the iron stock and social control. You have to be prepared for that. Be prepared for
Yes,
that.
yes, yes.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge that young generation have today. I think that's all, Dr. Rahman.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Mia. Let's hear what will Dr. Nazli say about this. Yes, Dr. Nazli. What are the challenges in nurturing independence, especially to the millennial in Malaysia?
Well, we are in the era that everything moves so fast. We are in the era that forces us to produce outcomes instantly, often within a few months to 1 year. These are among the challenges that the millennial, the digital generation has to face today. In fact, the Gen X also has to follow this trend. Yet, we at the local and the global level talk so much about the importance of being sustainable and resilient. Ironic, isn't it? We won't be sustainable and resilient if we have to produce patriotism instantly. To instill patriotism to citizens and preserve our independence are a long-term agenda. It's an organic process through education and socialization, which what Professor already mentioned. The fundamental must be solid and strong. Otherwise, independent may be ended like social media influencers, for instance, the in thing that is so close to the millennial hearts. Your IG, your TikTok followers may fluctuate or worse, being cancelled easily. We cannot treat independent like instant recognition through social media, influencer, through influencer of 15 minutes of fame by participating in reality show. Independent is not a mass product. Independent is an honor to the country. This is a missed tribute to independence. Once independence is gone, rebuilding is always difficult. This is the challenge that the millennial have to face if the independence is gone. Therefore, they have no choice. They have to be an informed citizen. That is the only way those millennials will be able to filter the endless goods and good and bad news in today's world. I think that is my response, Dr. Rahman. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Nazli, for the explanation about the challenges of to the millennial, especially in Malaysia. So we will gonna have a Q&A session again, and I think we take a break for a while for 5 minutes, and after this we're gonna pick some questions to the panelists, and yeah, to the students you can still, to the audience you can still send your questions, send in your questions to the chat box, and we will pick up some questions and ask the panelists later. Okay, see you in 5 minutes.
jiwa kita semua. Visit truly Asia, Malaysia, warna-warni kehidupan bahagia. Dalam Malaysia, melawat Malaysia, tentang seni budaya dan bangsa. Visit truly Asia, Malaysia, segala bermula di sini, di Malaysia.
Selamat datang ke Malaysia.
Nadi hati jiwa kita.
Dalam istana penuh cahaya, rakyat aman hidup bersama. Silakan datang ke negeri hamba, alami, rasai keindahan ciptaannya.
That's beautiful, Terengganu, Malaysia. So we meet again in the International Forum with the topic Independence, a historical perspective and the way forward. We have picked up some questions from the audience, and let's start with Mr. Achil again. So I think this is quite like exam question. So this is from Parmanda Saputra from Universitas Sriwijaya, Indonesia. So what is your role as a citizen? And what is your view on being independent and free physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, healthily, socially? Is the independence that you get is true independence and is completely independent? So that's the question, Mr. Achil.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a very
Slightly handsome
personal.
questions, right?
One thing I would be uh talking about would be like a few years ago. I have like uh, realized that one of my role in society would be to mold students, to teach them what to think, but to kind of develop in them the way of thinking so that they will always not bow to authority whenever it is enforced on them, to be critical. And uh I have, I think, designed all my, even my classes and all my lessons based on that idea. And that's the cause that I am having, to not really to teach students as a form of authority, but to be with them and to be asking almost similar questions that they have. Now, in terms of independence, like spiritually and all of that, uh, am I really independent? In terms of, it's a very metaphysical question about what it means to have true independence, though.
Yes.
I don't dabble on such questions because I find metaphysics a bit odd, to some degree. What I will say, however, is that uh, in in a world or a network of interdependencies, there are spaces in which we can maneuver. And that to me is freedom and independence. Yeah, it's interesting that uh, sometimes I think that we really think that we are free, that it's almost impossible for us to withhold that freedom. And that sometimes it takes a little degree of authority to kind of limit that freedom. But that's what I said about having higher causes, because when you have a cause to live by, it focuses your freedom so that your actions will be in line towards what you will think will make society better.
Mhm.
So I don't have like idealistic visions of, oh, this is what independence should be. This is the space that we're given, a kind of trial and error. Going back to the first question, it's a kind of trial and error wherein we have to show how we care for our country with the little spaces that is provided with us. And freedom and independence there is when you are not like demanded by your own state to do this and that. That you yourselves were, let's just say, taught how to think for the country instead of letting the state, mold you on what to think and that you should obey. So I think we enjoy that freedom. Although in the Philippines, I could probably say there's just too much freedom sometimes, and that it leads to no sense of direction.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Achil. Okay. Next question goes to Dr. Nazli. I think this question from Melly from Sriwijaya Universitas Indonesia. So I want to ask about the history that is built from a country certainly involve other parties. Many of the facts that we just know about the country itself raises the view that history can be manipulated by people with previous interests so as to create a positive, negative view, possibly of certain parties. What if it is done by our country? Have we done independence on lies? Can you catch it, Dr. Nazli Aziz?
My line is not so clear, but then I think the essence of the question that you said was about the educations, right? About what needs to be done to address the imbalances in the knowledge that we get. What is that the question?
Okay. What I can say from the question that um,
You just read again. Sorry, because the line wasn't was of a few seconds. So then I can respond on that.
Okay, she wanted to ask about the history that is built from a country certainly involve other parties. Many of the fact that we just know about the country itself raises the view that history can be manipulated by the people with previous interests so as to create a positive or negative view, possibly, of certain parties. So yeah, we hide the real story behind the history. So what if it's done by our country on that matter? Have we done independence online?
Right. This is very interesting question and
Yes,
quite
very
hard to
interesting
answer
question.
actually.
Yes.
Well, I start with the positive note first. Every country need heroes.
Mami di mana, Dek?
To represent the history of their nations. So sometimes we create a hero to instill patriotism among the kids, even though it's a myth sometimes. And on the other side, I'm going to quote what William Barr said. He says that history is always written by the winner, which is true. When two cultures clash, the loser is obliterated, sorry. And the winner writes the history books which glorify their own cause and definitely disparage the conquered foe. So that's what happened before, and it's still happening actually. But somehow, if we try to stop this vicious cycle of feeding the millennia with false knowledge, with the wrong facts, then history need to be rewrite. We need to rewrite the history. Stop consuming quote unquote the facts written by the winners. If you read, I use the example in Malaysia, our history textbook has gone quite extensively, has been revised quite extensively from 1950s to today's. Prior to the establishment of Malaysia, of course, there was nothing about Sabah and Sarawak, but then history has been interpreted in different dimensions. The narrative has become different when Sabah and Sarawak become a part of Malaysia, and also, of course, it's also became different when Singapore decided to opt out from Malaysia. I hope I answered his question.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nazli. Aziz, we have a few questions goes to Dr. Nazli again, but we put it on hold because we asked another question to Miss Mia first. So Miss Mia, so let's go through the questions, and I have one questions from Ilham, Indonesia. How does independence mean to the marginal groups in your country? So how does independence mean to the marginal group in your country, Miss Mia, in Indonesia? Marginal group in Indonesia.
So maybe if you have here, please kindly open your mic, because marginal
Yeah, sure.
like, what is marginal about? Is it minority? Because if you are asking about minority in Indonesia, you have to specify there are a lot of minority in Indonesia, right? You have. Is it possible for you to join us here?
Ilham?
Is it Ilham here? I'm
Ilham,
afraid Ilham maybe not here.
please
Maybe Ilham
unmute
on
your
YouTube, right?
microphone and ask directly to your lecturer.
I think Ilham in YouTube perhaps because we're not really familiar with this application. In Indonesia we use Zoom. Okay. Okay, let's just say this minority. So there's a lot of minority in Indonesia, Mister. Especially in Papua.
Yes.
Papua people still struggle for independence, right?
Yes, very struggle. Yeah.
There. So the question is, how independence then means to minority in Indonesia, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm not really minority. Let me make this answer for you. This is not really makeup answer, but as I read the newspaper, right, these minority people in Indonesia is struggle for recognition. So independent program is recognition. They really wanna make their own self-governance, right? Because Indonesia is the big country managed by one power, my tres politica, I mean, three power, executive, judicial, and executive, judicial, and what one legislative, right?
Legislative, yes.
So when Indonesia was proclaimed the independent in 17 August, and they tried to amend the new what we call it now Pancasila, right? Is it you familiar, Dr. Ahmad? Are you familiar with Pancasila? Dr. Nazri and Professor Achan?
Yeah, I heard the word Pancasila. What in Malay, Dr. Nazli, we call Pancasila?
It's a Rukun Negara, it's the same.
Rukun Negara. Yes, Rukun Negara.
Yes. What about in Philippines? Do Philippines have kind of rules or any what we call it Pancasila in English?
Ideology.
Ideology. Yeah, ideology. Sorry.
Ideology then. Our ideal happens to be something like nationalism. Most people usually talk something in that order. Although I'm not a nationalist, patriotism is enough for me. I love my country.
Okay. So the first ideology from Pancasila, Panca means five, is ketuhanan yang Maha Esa, or it means the gods, the Almighty, only one God for all. There's a lot of going on at the time. Before it was ketuhanan yang Maha Esa, it was only recognized Islam as the first religion in Indonesia. At the time, some people from another religion, we have a lot of influence come to Indonesia. Buddhist, Hinduism. Now we recognize Confucius. So at the time, people was rejecting the idea of the ideology for Allah as the first ideology. So it was replaced. So people just will agree that we are sharing the same name, same nation, same identity. So that is what happening at the time. But what I think that independence for minority, especially for Papua people who have struggled now, is really sensitive thing to mention in here.
Yes.
It is really sensitive, but they are really needs the recognition. It's more what we call it precious than anything.
Until today, Ms. Mia?
I believe until today. Yeah. A couple of months ago, I read the newspaper. They were invited to the court of law. They still, they still fight for independence. So I don't really want to talk about this, because this is really sensitive. Another thing, Dr. Ahmad, I I noticed there is a question maybe from our friend from Philippines. I'm really sorry. This is came from Archie, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
If Archie was here, I'm so sorry. I cannot answer your question. This is not my capacity, but I really want to tell you that there is nothing. There is no such thing like the rise of extremist religion or tradition. Traditional. We're still doing
It's okay, Miss Mi.
fine. We still practice Islam from our Prophet Muhammad SAW, peace be upon him. So
So,
nothing to worry about. Thank you, Dr. Rahman.
okay, thank you, Miss Mia. Again, this question goes to Dr. Nazli. Simple question from the Junaidi, lecturer of Sriwijaya University, Indonesia. What is the meaning of independence to the poor people? What is the meaning of independence to the poor people?
Thank you, Bapak Junaidi. I'm not trained as a sociologist, but I think to the meaning of independence to the poor people is the ability to have a social mobility. It's very important for the poor people to be able to change their social economy class into mobilized into the middle class society in any country, and the mobilization of the society only can be done through education, and then being an independent nation, to me, meaning that we have the inclusive right to set the merit, to set the direction, and also to carry out affirmative action to allow these poor people to have equal accessibility to the basic needs through education, through have services, shelter, and of course basic basic needs like safe waters and etc. That is my response to you, Bapak Junaidi. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nazli. Again, question to Dr. Nazli from Muhammad Iqbal Oktariansa from Sriwijaya University, Indonesia. I have a question. My question is, we all know that Indonesia and Malaysia have many similarities, especially diversity in terms of social and culture. These similarities were born as a unifying essence of complete independence. But on the other hand, this diversity raises a big challenge for the independence of the nation. What are the efforts made by Malaysia in responding to this diversity so that it does not become a threat to the independence of the nation?
Well, to answer this question, I'm going to be a quite cliche again. I think the slogan "Unity in Diversity" has been used globally, and it was popular. It was being coined by the European Union in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. And then when we're talking about diversity, meaning we're talking about inclusiveness in one country, because in the 21st century, everybody talk about good governance. Everybody talk about the importance of accommodate, which is related to the question by one of the Prof. Mia's student, that how do we accommodate the diversity? The essence to this question is inclusiveness, a term that has been coined since the 1990s when the concept of good governance became popular. the narrative is different from one country to another. So does in the case of Malaysia, how Malaysia accommodate the diversity is different, it's unique. For example, in Malaysia, which is, I think, everybody is happy, nobody complains about it, that to accommodate diversity, every major religion festive is a national holiday. The Eid Mubarak, Christmas, Waisak Day, Diwali, and etc., are the national holidays. Even though we are federal countries, that none of the state can say no, that we're not going to observe the public holiday because the majority of people here is Muslim. For example, in Terengganu, 97% of the population is Muslim, overwhelmingly Muslim, but we still observe the public holiday of Christmas, of Chinese New Year, of Buddhism, etc. And when we're talking about diversity in today's world, it goes beyond ethnic or race, actually. It's also involved gender, it's involved socioeconomic status. For example, to respond back to Bapak Junaidi question, and then how independent may brings the diversity, the inclusiveness. My answer is through constitution and good governance. Independence allows us to create and enforce our constitution, our own law, and how we should run the country. I have to say that this is not an easy task for any governments, be it Malaysian government, Indonesian government, or the Philippines government. The tempo is different. We cannot, and I think also when talking about diversity, we cannot expect a newly independent countries such as Timor-Leste, for example, to fully implement diversity in the country holistically. Even the European countries have taken a very, very long way to implement diversity, i.e. inclusiveness. United States gained independence in 1776, if I'm not mistaken, but up to the 1960s, Americans still fought for diversity, for inclusiveness, especially among the Black Americans.
Yes.
Rosa Parks' thesis in 1955 is the best example. She became an international icon of resistance to racial segregation. Still, both American and European have been and are still working to embody diversity in their country. Then, of course, it's Malaysia and inclusive society. Is Malaysia a diversity country? By constitution, is yes. By practice, there are a lot of room to be improved. I would say that on socially divided between when it comes to Malaysia, when you call diversity is normally what appear to the locals and also to the international committee is between the Malays and the Chinese. But then I reckon this is more of this is my personal view. I reckon this is more on the politicians' problem rather than the ordinary citizen. Often the ethnic relations hit up by the politicians during the election campaign because it's sad. I stop here, Dr. Rahman.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nazli. So we go to the last question, maybe to Mr. Achil. From I think from your student maybe. In the Philippines, there appears to have a strong clamor for a federal government. Do you think this will solve the problem in the country, considering that there are provinces that consider Manila to be too imperial for their liking? Please.
Yeah. considering that my father was a friend of probably one of the first guys who kind of like introduced a formal federal concept into Philippine government. I'm not so sure, but the problem with the Philippines is that everything is always centered on Manila. Maybe not these days because the president comes from our island. So that has always been the problem. And in terms of budget allocations, how projects are approved, they usually have the preferred status. And many of the provinces are thinking it's way too much. Too much budget granted to the capital, and then the rest of the countryside. You know, if you look at the Philippines, there are only maybe a couple of cities that are, let's just say, modern in the sense of, you know, when I'm looking at the videos about Malaysia and all of that, maybe I can name like 3 or 4 cities, but then the rest would be, you know, slumped into this very agricultural area, and then the government itself seems to have no care about our agriculture. It has to be said, that's the truth. Yeah, so regarding the federal government, I don't really know. Maybe I can ask Dr. Nazli if how it's working in Malaysia, because I'm not really sure, because our local government code does appear to be inclined towards a federal system, while our constitution is going the other way. It's more inclined to a you know a central system. So it's they are like heading in a separate direction. So I don't know. Maybe that's why I said maybe I will ask this Dr. Nasli, because I mean, Malaysia is also a country, a state of diverse people. It's like maybe you can enlighten us Filipinos on, you know, when we're dealing with many provinces and diversity, what can federalism actually do?
Right.
Okay, Dr. Nazli, you want to add?
Well, let me begin by saying that there are so many countries that have changed their governance system from centralization to decentralization in Asia, Europe, Latin America, and Africa. Federalism, basically, theoretically, federalism allowed the country to decentralize the power to the state and the local governments to reflect the locals' need in economy, politics, culture, and so on. So, in my opinion, federalism is the best governance system to overcome differences and to localize the system. It embodies the good governing concept, definitely. But then I think if the Philippines would like to introduce federalism, it should be introduced and implemented gradually to avoid confusion and the collapse of the state. The constitution needs to clearly spell out the jurisdiction of each government levels, and the check and balance system is put into place. In Malaysia, our constitution spells out clearly the jurisdiction of the federal government, the state government, and the local government in our what we call a nice schedule. So, which considered as solely the federal government jurisdiction, which one is shared, which one is or concurrent lease, and which one are the state lease. Then another thing about federalism or decentralization, that when I think everybody is eager to decentralize the country, which is good because it's basically moving to a more democratic. But then history also shows there is a tendency that the transition between centralization to decentralization will create a new monster, a little Napoleon at the local levels, at the local governments, because it has been done drastically without giving full thought on that. If federalism sounds overwhelmed to the Philippines, to Manila, perhaps confederations like Switzerland is the best alternative. Or Manila just provide more authorities to the local governments through decentralization without being a federal state, because we know that currently everything is basically concentrated in the zone, in Manila, in Makati, in Quezon City, in Metro Manila, etc., etc. So it needs to be go beyond that, to Visayas, to Cebu, and Mindanao, and etc. That is my response, Dr. Rahman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Nazli. Thank you, Mr. Akil. Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, if you permit me a minute, I have a short query. I don't know whether you will permit me. If you permit me, I'll be grateful to you. I have a short query.
You want to ask question to panel?
Yeah, entire panel.
Okay, Dr. Babu Gopal.
Yes. So
Yeah, a
my
short one
question.
maybe. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Please.
we cherish each other. I'm from India. We cherish each other. We are a multicultural society. Just similar to my country, India. I have a precise question as to whom do you prefer when it comes to multiculturalism or to negotiate international order in between India and Pakistan. I don't know, you may be soft or you may be hard, but I just want your precise answer, if you can answer. That's all.
Okay.
Neither more
Okay.
nor less.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Babu Gopal. Maybe Dr. Nazli, Miss Mia, or Mr. Achim want to address the questions in a minute?
I think, can I start first? Can I start first?
Yes, yes, sure, sure.
Yeah, sure. All right. I'm not an expert to the Indian and Pakistan affairs, but I'm trying to answer your question very broadly. I think when it comes to the multiculturalism, it's very the necessary institutions are very important to build an independent nation that basically respond to the multiculturalism. And then the issue of each country normally, when it comes to multiculturalism, despite the belief system, is also related very much to the social economic issues. So then the country, be India or Pakistan or other any country, have to invest a lot in institution building. Education is one of the most important capacity and institution building in prospering and nurturing the spirit of independence and peacefulness. Again, when it comes to the how to negotiate, my point must kind of perhaps is biased to the bias as a pacifist. I'm a peace lover, so my view is rather different. Like, if I can give an example, which is already mentioned by Dr. Rahman earlier in the opening, that Malaysia, Singapore was part of Malaysia in 1963, and then we separated again in 9 August 1965, and Singapore since then became an independent city-state. And what interesting is that what lesson we can learn from this separation movement is that it was a non-violent power transition. It's happened without having bloodshed.
Yes, absolutely.
Movement also occurred during the Velvet Revolution in 1989 24 years later, in what was the Czechoslovakia, which are Czech Republic and Slovakia today. So if Malaysia and Singapore did it, and if Czech Republic and Slovakia did it without having a bloodshed, so I think other country is able to do. My answer is so many things can be achieved peacefully, amicably, cordially through negotiation. We don't need to go to the battle declaring war or start a civil war or involving superpower to help us with the battle. I always in the position, I always believe that superpower love to be involved in the other countries' affairs, other country home affairs, political, domestic, because they can sell their weapon. And I think this peace building should be instilled in the education to the millennia, the importance of education, of being harmonized with each other, which is also, I think, reflect to the question that I scrolled down asked by a few students who asked to the chat board. And again, I think I'm very proud of being Malaysia. I think Malaysia are rational and peace lover. Even the transition of federal government in Malaysia for the first time from Barisan Nasional to Pakatan Harapan in 2018 was so smooth, despite so many bad news predicted locally and internationally. The changes would create havoc and riot in Malaysia, but it didn't happen. Why it's happened? Because people are rational, and the rationality is installed through education. That is my response to it. Thank you.
All right.
I hope I answered your question, Dr. Gopal.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nazrin. So, Miss Mia, Mr. Achin, want to add something? Oh.
Can I continue with what Dr. Nasri is saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So, just a little addition to what Dr. Nasri is saying, because more or less the same experience we have here in the Philippines, especially with the Moro. If you have heard, for example, of the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, the secessionist movement, and all of that. Two things. It's almost similar with what Dr. Nasri is saying. What I really appreciated or admired with the peace movements in Mindanao was that there was a strong push to change the narrative from violence to peace. And it was sustained by many, by the education sector. And second, it's, although I cannot imagine how to do it when we speak about Pakistan or India, because the problems are deeply rooted than ours. But it's always better to be open-minded in terms of negotiation, to not consider oneself as more superior than the other. Instead of looking at it from a very confrontational perspective, but to look at it from a cooperation kind of perspective, wherein we need to coexist and therefore we need to negotiate, not to impose ourselves upon the other. And that's what is going on here in Mindanao, the BRMM. It's really, it's a good, as what was said, trial and error. And right now it looks like it's going to be working. So yeah, peace sometimes it offers the challenge of negotiation, but at least we're not killing each other.
Yes.
So, something like that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Achin. Last word, Miss Mia.
Thank you, Dr. Rahman. I was wondering, Dr. Bible, are you still with us?
Very much.
Okay. Dr. Babu, I was wondering if this conflict is between government to government or people and people to people as well.
No, I'm talking about two nations that form significant geopolitical strategies and significance in the South, East, and South Asia.
You know, when I don't really get the question actually, but I do believe you are talking about the conflict between Pakistan and Palestine and how we are can relate with the problem. Is it the question? Is it question? Hello, Doctor. Dr. Ahmad, could you please help me to make it clear? Is it what I catch up from the Dr. Babu question is how we are how we can relate with the Pakistan and Indian problem? Is it a question?
No, not a
Yes.
problem. Whom do
Yes,
you
sure.
cherish? Whom do you celebrate? And whom do you want to suggest to refine and reform?
Refine and reform. Okay. Let me try to answer this question. Actually,
Yeah, last word, Miss Mia. Yeah,
yes.
last word, Miss Mia. Yeah, sure. 1 minute.
Okay. Okay, I will just add this kind of problem, this multicultural problem issue is not really the matter. The matter is that you have to you have to check what really happened about what we call in Galtung theory is ABC triangle. You know, you have to really know the attitude, the behavior, and the contradiction happening in this country. If not, if negotiation cannot be done, you know, we really cannot negotiate each other because the attitude, the behavior of the contradiction that make the contradiction is not matched. So whatever the conflict is, this problem cannot be solved. You know, that's it. What happened in every conflict in this world, every multinational country facing today.
All right.
That's
Thank
Dr.
you.
Ahmad.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Achil, Miss Mia, and Dr. Nazli for addressing this interesting topic. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's forum, Independence, a historical perspective and the way forward. On behalf of UMT International Center, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day. And I have an announcement to the participant. Please click on the link provided to fill out the attendance form. Make sure you put the right email address because we will send the e-certificate to the stated email address only. Thank you and see you again. Now I pass the session back to the MC. Thank you so much.
See.
Ladies and gentlemen, I really hope that you've enjoyed today's discussion. On behalf of the organizing committee, I'd like to extend our thanks to all the members of the panel for their insights. Dr. Nazli of UMT, Assistant Professor Achil Daud of Mindanao State University, Irigan Institute of Technology, the Philippines, and Ms. Nora Slamia Supli of Universitas Sriwijaya, Indonesia. A big thank you as well for our learned moderator, Dr. Abdul Rahman bin Abdul Latif. And last and certainly not least, thank you to all the members of the audience for tuning in. My name is Kaizani and I hope to see you again in the not too distant future.